Okay. So we are continuing in this. We started off with the tshuva from Rav Moshe yesterday. Let me just share my screen. There we go. And let me also bring up the tshuva from Rav Moshe. I sent out the packet yesterday. I hope you all got it on the WhatsApp. Let's see. Moshe. There we go. And let me just share the tshuva that we were seeing from Rav Moshe. So we had started this tshuva from Rav Moshe yesterday about when a child grows up in America, which is what he's talking about, and is not leaves the derech, goes off the derech. Ve'ein mechanchem es b'neim l'Torah mitzvahs, and they don't raise their children to Torah and mitzvahs. Ein lehistapek b'zara ma'aliyah. There's no reason to think that that their children may grow up grow up as proper Jews. He says, even though it does occur once in a while, that from a person who's a Mechalel Shabbos, they will have a son who becomes a Baal Tshuva. This is an uncommon occurrence. This is infrequent. And you don't have to worry about that. Maybe that'll happen as far as a father deciding that he wants to cut off a son who's not from his inheritance. Shelachein vaday rishai lo rak litein litzdaka ela af litein la'acherim rishai v'ruach hachamim noicha mizeh v'gam zachur latov shebazeh lo yiflagu al Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. He says, not only is there no machlokus between the Chachamim and Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, like we saw yesterday, that the Chachamim said that you have every right to cut off a son from an inheritance. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says no. Maybe I'm sorry. The Chachamim say that Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel is the hardliner. He's the one who says cut him off, forget about him. And the Chachamim are the ones who say you never know what kind of child he'll have. But in this case, no one would disagree. Everyone would agree that in a situation like this, that the Chachamim really are happy with you because you're taking away an inheritance from a child who's not behaving correctly, and there's no hope for any future progeny. V'gam yoter mizeh af b'masor sheyesh safek delefok minei zara ma'aliyah shemitam zeh asur la'abed mamono biyad. He says, and I'll go even further, says Rav Moshe. Let's say you have a son who's from, but he's a masur. He snitches on people to the government. He does bad things. He behaves badly in financial matters. Okay? So we said in that situation, we go like the Chachamim who say that you shouldn't take away his Yerusha because maybe his children will be good from kids. Mistaver shuhurak shelo la'abed ma sheyesh lo kvar aval rashai lahavir nachalam yimenu. So he says, Rav Moshe says, I believe that that's taking away something that already has been designated to him. But it is permitted if you haven't yet drawn up your estate, you do have a right to pass him over and to not give him a portion. Daha gedola mize isa b'shach simen shin pei chesif katan samach beis kasav mehator b'shem bala arach da'al yedei grama o garmi mutar la'abdo. He says the Shach says that if a child is a masur and is a criminal and is not behaving correctly, so then you are allowed to through a passive action or through indirect action, you're allowed to destroy him. V'cheinu biyam shel shlomo, etc., etc. V'kol shekain havaras nachala deinu maziklal. So that would certainly apply to when a child, let's say he's sat in prison and he snitched on his fellow Jews. So he says, that to take away Yerusha by not actively giving him something would be permitted. You're not damaging him at all. You're just not awarding him anything. That you would be allowed to do. And this is certainly true according to the Rama in Shulchan Aruch, that you'd be allowed to do this. And certainly, therefore, if a person's son is not religious, then you don't have to worry about maybe he'll have proper children in most situations. So Rav Moshe Feinstein is also a hardliner on this. And he also believes that it's perfectly legitimate to deny a Yerusha from a son who's gone off the derech, because there's really no hope. It's extremely unlikely, he says, that son is going to have children who are going to grow up from. Ba'ayin b'chasam sofer Choshen Mishpat simin kuf nun gimel shegam kein meforish Rabisha she'eno mumer elabisha ba'alma shehu she'eno zahir kol kach b'mitzvahs. And the Chassam Sofer also understands that when the halacha addresses a son, a bad son, it's not referring to a son who has left Torah and mitzvos, but rather he's not so meticulous in mitzvos. Oh, she'eno nohi kavod ba'aviv, kipirish asma, or he's disrespectful to his father, but he still comes to shul every Shabbos, but he won't daven with his father and is rude to his father. The implication being is that if the child is a mumar, meaning that he's machal Shabbos publicly, that you would be allowed to remove the inheritance from him. What's written over there, as far as not damaging or harming a child who, let's say, is a masur, right, by getting him into further trouble, that you shouldn't do because maybe you'll be harming his children. He says, but that's only to proactively go out of your way to get him into trouble. But to deny him a portion of your inheritance where you're not taking away anything from him, you're just not awarding him anything, that would be certainly permissible. But ben mumer lechalo shabbosos v'turei Torah v'isurei tatorah she'enu mechanech ezbanav l'kol yalma muter lahaver nachal mimenu. But if a child is machalo Shabbos and does other isurim in the Torah, he's not going to raise his child properly, and therefore there's no concern. And therefore, based on the question that I was posed, did the father act properly by denying one of his sons a portion in the inheritance? The answer is yes, he has acted properly. Wow. So,
well, like he doesn't say even as well, the non-religious kid will get Yerusha. Torah law?
By Torah law. I mean, it's probably by secular law also. If you don't draw up a will, or you just say in your will that I want my inheritance to be divided equally among my heirs, so then it will be, But but a father has a right to say, this is my last will and bequest, and you put in a special paragraph to make sure that your daughters can get an inheritance as well. We went through that when we did that sefer about inheritance, how to draw up a will. It must be now over a year ago that we did that sefer. And so there's a way you can structure it any way you want. But the question is it permissible al pi halacha to cut out a child completely who's not from? So based on Rav Moshe, the answer is yes, because the whole argument of not cutting out a bad son out of an inheritance is based on the fact that you don't know who your grandchildren are going to be. Maybe your grandchildren will turn out to be upstanding, righteous individuals. But Rav Moshe Feinstein is of the opinion that when a child leaves Yiddishkeit, then his children, it's extremely unlikely that his children are going to become upstanding, righteous individuals based on the criteria of being Shomer Shabbos. And therefore, you are permitted to cut out a child like that from your will. I have trouble with this. I have a lot of trouble with this, as I'm sure you can imagine. I think that today, I'm not sure where Moshe wrote this either one or two generations ago, and maybe he might take a different position today. I don't know. So let's go back.
That the father maybe likely also child that a situation that might happen. So that maybe he could get him back on the derrick because he wouldn't want to lose. I mean, it's not, you know.
Well, listen, I can certainly imagine a number of scenarios where a father would want to cut his child out of his will. I can think of a number of different scenarios, but I will tell you this. The way that I would want my priorities to be as far as what my children get and don't get from my meager estate, is not necessarily based on how frum they are, but rather I would think that maybe how much they cared for their parents would be a criterion, right? There are a lot of times when a child leaves home and he says, "Bye, mom and dad, I'm going to seek my fortune." And you don't really hear too much from that child because the child really doesn't show that much concern for his parents. And that's fine. We don't own our children. They can do whatever they want, but we also don't have to leave them anything, or we can leave them less. I think that the statement of the Chachamim that you never know who your grandchildren are going to turn out to be still has a lot of validity, even if a person has children who are not from. Because in today's world, even traditional Jews who, let's say, know that they have a connection with tradition can really accomplish great things for the world. And let's say my non-frum grandson turned out to come up with the cure for cancer or something like that. I think that would be worthy of giving him something to boost his career, even if he wasn't from. I would think. And then maybe that, and you're right also, Ron, that it might even be, oh, grandpa left me, my Orthodox grandfather left me this gift. Maybe I should look into the way he lived his life. So not so much as a motivation, I would say, but sort of maybe as something to inspire them in the future. I don't know.
General rule is that a testator can be capricious or fanciful or whatever, and cut out his children also, subject to the supporting a dependent we talked about, right? The dependent's relief. If someone's a dependent, that'll supersede the will if they go to court, and also making a bequest that's contrary to public policy. So what's that?
What does that mean, public policy?
Exactly. So here's so it means like this. It means contrary to common law or contrary to statutory law. So here's the story. So a daughter got cut out by her father who will. This is the leading case.
Can everyone hear this?
And so she said that the father cut her out for discriminatory motivations. In other words, the man was a black man. She married a white man, had a kid. She says the father cut her out of the will because it offended human rights on racism.
What?
Yeah, yeah, so.
1 second. Her father was black.
And
He cut her out of the will because he didn't want to.
She married a white man who was racist. He says, I'm having nothing to do with you. I'm cutting you out of my will.
Uh-huh.
He dies. The daughter goes to court and says that's discriminatory motivation, contrary to the law. It's against public policy that the court should intervene because it's racist. She goes to court. The court at the lower level gives it to her, but the Court of Appeals says, first of all, in the will, like the rabbi said, he said, I'm not giving my daughter anything. This is smart because we were estranged. She didn't come and talk to me. We had a communication problem. And that's why I didn't talk to her for 10 years. I'm not giving her anything. The court said, that's not discriminatory intention. That's perfectly fine. You
Yeah.
can cut her out.
Sounds like there were other issues besides her marrying a white man.
Nothing to do with race. So you can not contrary to public policy, even if he had that discriminatory motivation, maybe a religious, it's another human rights ground, right, based on religious practice, like a pro kid or something.
Yeah.
The Court of Appeals said that the Human Rights Code doesn't make that illegal because that's not denial of a service or a facility. You're not giving them, letting them stay in the house or rent or something like this. This is a bequest in a will. It's not a denial of a service or a facility or anything. Human Rights Code doesn't apply at all to a will and giving away your property. So that's not contrary to public policy on a human right ground, which would include religious, practices or something like that, denial of something for that. The will doesn't fall in that category. But what is contrary to public policy is another case that you look up, which is what if the father left in a residual of his estate to some kids, not to his daughter, but he gave it to the National Alliance, which is a neo-Nazi group, which is completely like Hamas, right? It's like they hate everybody, they're hateful, whatever, and he gave a good chunk to them and not the daughter. Daughter goes to court and says that's contrary to public policy. You should set that aside because it's illegal, it's against, whatever, all this. The court agreed, said that bequest is contrary to public policy and gave it to her.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Will give to Hamas these days. That would be against public policy. But that's the secular law.
Yeah, right. So that is secular law. Interesting. Okay. All right. Thank you for that, Marvin. So now Ulam, so let's finish this tshuva. So getting back to Rav Sharaga, because everyone was curious, what is this? Rav Sharaga has been a bit of a hardliner himself, as far as, telling women to give back to Yerusha and so forth. So he says, so he quotes Rav Moshe, Ulam b'shut igros Moshe kosav dimabein mechal Shabbos befarhesi v'lo mechanech ezbanav b'derech haTorah. He says, he quotes Rav Moshe saying that if once a child leaves the derech, there's very little chance of his kids becoming frum because kids usually imitate the parent. And we go to the next one. He says, even though we do see sometimes kids become balei tshuva and rebel against their non-frum parents, it's a small minority, and we don't have to be concerned about that. And Rav Ovadia also was of the same opinion and added additional arguments. Hashem Yisborach Ya'ara Ruach Tahara Mimarim Shalitztarchu Lahagia Lidvarim. May God pour out a spirit of purity from heaven so that we don't need to worry about these considerations. So let's see what Makor Baruch quotes from Rav Ovadia. He says, "The mikomakom yasher liyoresh hazem minachasav shir arba zuzi o yoser." Rav Ovadia says that when you have a child who's left the derech, he's not from, you have to leave him something. It says you have to leave him at least 4 zuz, which is a few bucks. Okay? This is based on an opinion that says that when we say that you have to leave something to every heir, it doesn't mean you have to leave an equal amount to each heir. You do have a right to give more to one heir and less to another, as long as you leave a few dollars, so that even the son that you leave very little to has something from the estate. V'chein kosav harashbatz b'tshuva halacha gimel v'chein huva halacha b'ksos hachoshen v'otziyim sham b'sof tshuvaso b'zeh halashon. Rav Ovadia finishes his tshuva with the following language: Umikol makom hachacham einav b'rosho. He says, a wise person has his eyes in his head. Lihitnaheg b'mitinut leval yidche even achar hanoifel. He says, you have to be patient. You have to not kick the stone after it's fallen. Meaning, I think what what means is that, like, don't nail the coffin shut. Ulai yesh tikva shiachzor l'mutav. You never know. Maybe this child will end up doing tshuva. B'shav v'rafalo. He'll be healed, and he'll recover from his religious lapses. Ulai yesh lasos ka'atza social Rav Tzur Yaakov. Sheyafkid chelak min hayerusha b'dei adam neman. Maybe what you should do is what this Rav Tzur Yaakov, I don't know who that is, but he gave the following advice: leave your Yerusha in the hands of someone you trust, like in an escrow account that's in a trust that's supervised by someone who is a close confidant and friend. The Tanai Gomor Kitanai B'nei Gad Uvnei Ruvain, with specific instructions that are ironclad. She'im achar kach yachzor haben b'tshuva, that if later on your wayward son does tshuva, o she'yeh lo zara ma'alya, or if the son doesn't do tshuva but he has children who themselves are from yekabel chelak hayerusha shelo, then you can distribute from the trust fund to that child or grandchild. V'im lav yitanenu livno hachacham o litzdaka. And if not, by a certain date, then you can disperse the funds in the trust to the other children or to charity. V'ha'emes v'hashalom ehavu. And you should all love truth and peace. Ad kam l'sham. So Rav Ovadia gives some very practical advice. He goes a step further than Rav Moshe. He says, don't cut off the child completely, like irrevocably. But you know what? Set up a trust, assign a trustee over your trust fund, and who's much younger than you are, and tell him, see how things work out 20 years or so, let's say, after my departure, right? And if it turns out that one of my kids, who I've cut out of the will because of his lack of religiosity, if he ends up doing tshuva, then you can give him a distribution from the trust. Or if you see that one of his children is acting properly, then you can give them a distribution. And you can create a living trust, right? I mean, it's very easy. It's a good idea. What's considered a reasonably large amount of money?
And, I don't know if I would say at least half the money, but yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe can you do it in a way where you're not setting up a trust, where you can just give the money to someone who you trust?
No. I would. Well, do what you want. I got a number of trust accounts. You have to show documentation before you.
Uh-huh.
So that person who you did that without a formal trust is like, if he did, here's.
Uh-huh. Well, aren't there movies that with that story that, the father leaves an inheritance, but you have to get married in order to get the inheritance? Yeah, right.
The lawyer would, we set up a trust, we will make sure that's how it's in there, because it was like, no, we're going. So.
Well, I think it's very nice of Aj's policy.
On Jewish education. Is that?
So first of all, well, let's talk about either according to Jewish law and according to secular law. I think according to Jewish law, once you leave your estate to your children, I don't think you can control how they use it. How you would like it to be used. I think that can only be a request. There is a mitzvah l'kayim divrei hames. There's a mitzvah to fulfill the request of the testator, of the decedent. But can you? But it's not something that can be enforced, I think, in Jewish law. I believe, unless it's a gift that's given during your lifetime, where you say, I'm only giving you this gift on the condition that you use it for such and such. In which case, if the child does not use it for that purpose, then you can sue the child and get the money back according to halacha, right? Right. But I don't know what secular law would. Yeah. Well, if your children are God-fearing, then they will know this halacha, that there is a mitzvah to fulfill the will of the testator, and that, because that's a halacha. So you do have a right in your will to say, here's what I want this money to be used for. You do have a right to say that. Whether or not you can, but you'll never know. Right? Yeah. Okay, Marvin's going to check for us. You can expect something on your WhatsApp. All right. All right. Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you. We'll do our last class in Mirz Hashem tomorrow before Pesach. We'll see you soon.